Good morning. It is Wednesday, January 6th. I'm Jason Stanton. I serve at First Lutheran in Onalaska as senior pastor. This is my morning musing. I've been thinking about, as I was following the runoff elections in Georgia over the last couple days, I've been thinking about the separation of church and state. And because I read that Reverend Warnock, upon being elected, if he were to be elected, which it seems that he has been, he would continue preaching on Sundays from Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. And I was trying to imagine sorry, I was trying to imagine the how that would go for a Lutheran, for myself or for any other pastors I know. Like if we got elected to an office through a political party and then continued to preach in our church, it feels like 50% of our membership would, not be happy with that. I've been thinking about the separation of church and state, and how maybe we call it the wrong thing. Maybe instead of calling it the separation of church and state, maybe it should be called the separation of state from church. Because I think we too often, many Protestant churches anyway, too often get it mixed up as far as what that's for. The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And of course, it all started off as an effort to avoid the state endorsing or basically subsidizing, paying for one particular religious expression at the expense of, or the exclusion of, all other religious expressions. I'm guessing many of us remember, 5th, 6th, 7th grade social studies classes, history classes, about how, different parts of our country were religious havens for persecuted, mostly Christians from other parts of the world. And, so that's the roots of this. I was thinking about, what does this look like in the 21st century? What are we avoiding now? Because it's a little different now, how the church relates to a state, a nation, than it was like in Luther's day, where bishops basically ran the politics of an area with a prince. And the Pope had more political power than anyone. The Pope was the one who anointed, or not anointed, but crowned an emperor. There was a crossover between church and state then that we can't really even understand. But even now, in the 21st century, I looked this up. The Church of England sits on billions of dollars and still receives funding for the maintenance of its buildings from the state. All while many clergy are in financial hardship. I came across an article where clergy are very destitute. And the context of the church and how it serves the people of Britain, 15% of adults in Britain consider themselves Anglican, Church of England. So you've got this multi-billion-dollar structure of an institution that is additionally subsidized so that buildings and such can be maintained, while its clergy are underpaid, and it all exists to serve 15% of the population. More than 50% of British people say none, by the way, that they are not religiously affiliated at all. So anyway, it doesn't seem like that's working very well. The separation of church and state is not only a gift to the state, in that, it allows for more than one religious expression, it's a gift to the church, because then the church has to develop ways of funding and generosity among its own members, and not just depend on money coming from the government. Anyway, in the US, we've always wanted to avoid this relationship between the state and the church, but it comes from a place of a desire to believe what we feel called to believe. It's not a value that says we should be quiet about what we believe, because our beliefs actually may affect our politics. That's a big and an important difference, that it's not a separation so that forcing us to take our beliefs and just not say anything about them or apply them to our politics. It's a value that our nation has so that we can believe whatever we want, and apply them to wherever we want. We don't want the state to touch the church. We do want the church to affect the state. So that's what I've been thinking about with a Baptist preacher being elected to the Senate and then keeping his pulpit. It reminds me the church is people. It's not just an institution. This is why, as people seek to affect the state from a place of business, from a place of religion, whatever their perspective is, that's what being in the House or the Senate or local politics is about. So maybe instead of calling it separation of church and state, I think many times we think the church is supposed to stay out of the state. Maybe we should start saying separation of state and church. Or maybe we should say separation of state from church, because that would be more helpful and keep us from thinking that the church and the people of the church are supposed to just, not say anything, not apply our own religious values to how it is that the state affects everybody else, which is why a person like Reverend Warnock not only can get elected, but also say, I want to be elected so that we can all love our neighbors as ourselves. Keep faith alive.